Hi, this is part 2 of my facial rig demonstration. Now, as I have mentioned in my previous tutorial that we will be using expressions, part of mail scripts to drive our controls. So before we go into that, I would like to give you a basic demonstration on or to, well, to get you to understand a little bit of expressions. So let's say I create a cube. All right, and I'm going to set this auto 0, 0, 0. And I can access my expressions by going to Window, Animation Editor, Expression Editor. All right, and I'm gonna do my history. So looking at my objects, only when you select an object, the list of attributes will be reflected. All right. And as you can tell, you would have selected objects and attributes, so we will need to select the attribute that we would want to change. So in this case, perhaps it would be, just do a quick one, translate x. Okay, so I would have the name of my object pcube1.translatex. So I can highlight and Control C, which is to copy this entire script. Okay, this entire text, and paste it in my expression input box. So I have pcube1.translatex. I can set an equals to 1 and a semicolon. And a semicolon is basically to end off my statement or end off the command. So I hit create, and as you can tell right now, pcube1 translate x is 1, and it's of course highlighted in purple. So anything with this highlight is to tell you that it is being constrained by something, and in this case the purple means that it's being constrained by a script. All right, and I can do anything here like 1, even 2, and it's just gonna reflect as 2. And let's say I use 2 plus 2, okay, and it's just gonna give me 2, 4. So all of this is again pretty simple. You have your results, which is your pq1.translatex. This is what our output is going to be. And the input, it can be a command, it can be an equation. Most of the time it's going to be an equation in this case. And in this equation, this is what we will try to control our values of whichever attributes that we are driving towards. Okay, so in Maya itself, they have some keywords that that other scripting language or programming language do not have. And again, this is only special in Maya, and in programming, like for example, in C# or Python, they would also have their own keywords. So in this case, I'm just going to use a keyword frame, which might be used a lot of times for be it in animation or in controls, scripted controls for animation. Okay, so what does frame mean? And if you recall, this is our timeline and each is a frame. And if I hit edit, so right now it's frame 1. You will have X as frame 1, 2, 2, 3, 3. So in this case, if I were to scrub my timeline, this is going to animate. So that is pretty useful. Okay, so again, for most modelers, when you want to set up a turntable, the alternative way is to use your expression editor. So for example, instead of p-cube1, I'm going to use my rotate y, select that. And as you can tell, my expression has gone. One way to get it back, again, to select filter by expression name. I would have already an expression there. So I can change this to rotate y equals to frame. Okay, and immediately you can tell that the purple highlights at my translate X would be gone. Okay, so right now I would have this, and probably I should set this longer. All right, so I will have something like this. All right, and like I've mentioned before, this frame and anything that is behind, this is our output and this is my input. So if I were to multiply by 2, I can make my animation quicker, or just to make it a little bit extreme. All right. So we are gonna use something like this to drive our objects, or in this case, our facial rig. So how do we do that? So let's say I create a circle and gonna move it up. I'm gonna call this control. All right. Now, earlier on, I have already explained that this is my output and this is my input, and my input will always be an equation of some sort, right? So in this case, right now it's driven by frame. So right now I do not want it to be driven by frame. Instead, I want to be driven by my control. Okay, so let's say going back to my objects, I can always select my control, which is my nubs circle, right? Control, and I'm gonna use X, translate X, copy it, go back to my expression name, select my expression, and replace my frame times 20 by control.translate X. Okay, so if I hit edit, so what's gonna happen is if I were to move in translate X, my cube will spin. So if I were to move this, you can tell that it's spinning, right? So to make it a little bit more apparent, multiply by 20. All right. So in other words, we can kind of create a control and use that control to drive an animation on our objects. All right. And what happens if, let's say, I'm just gonna set this back and I want to put this in as an output. I'm gonna get expression invalid after edits. So again, trying to put any kind of equation in the beginning or in our output is not gonna work. All right. So coming back to our rig to continue where we end off. Okay. So there are a couple of stuff that we are gonna do. Things like our our cheekbone, and then the corner of our mouth, as well as how we open our jaw. So I'm just gonna show you some quick and easy way to do this. So I'm just going to create a nubs circle and put it right there. Make this a little smaller. All right. And I'm going to call this guy the left cheek control. Duplicate the left cheek control and move it to the opposite one. And I'm going to rename this to right cheek control. All right. Move it out a little bit. Okay. And we're going to freeze transform and delete the history. And again, you can do the same by duplicating and moving it to the corner of the mouth. And I'm going to call this guy the left mouth corner control. Duplicate. Before I duplicate, I should really want to make this a little smaller. All right, and rename this guy to right mouth corner control. Okay, and like what we did with the cheekbones, I'm just gonna move these guys out and freeze transform. All right. Now, for our cheekbone and for the corner of our mouth, most of the time we are just gonna move it around. Okay, we are not going to do anything too extreme, since our facial muscles are not gonna be moving too much in any of the directions. It's not gonna rotate anyway, so we are gonna use this as a translate joint. All right, so I'm gonna go to my window, animation add, expression add. Okay, go to my object name, and I will have my left cheek control. Okay, so again, because this is our output, let's say I'm going to control the XYZ. I'm not gonna do any kind of rotation and scale. So what is good is that I can always hide it, but really I'm not gonna see my joint anyway. I'm gonna see this, so I should really hide this. Lock and hide selected, so leaving only my translate X, Y, and Z, and maybe even Z. I don't need it at all, unless it's for a special animation sequence that I might need to put it in. But right now, maybe translate Z is not necessary, so I'm gonna look and hide selected, leaving only X and Y. All right. So the very first thing that my advice to you when it comes to setting up the rig is to move it first, because it might give you unexpected results. For example, if I were to move my translate X, look at my right panel, my channel box, what is really changing. So my icon says it's X, but really on my left cheekbone, it's my translate Z that is changing values. All right, so this is something that is pretty important, because due to the axis of our joints, it is different from the way our object's axis will move. All right, so knowing that it's my translate Z that is gonna move, so select my translate Z, and equals to my um, left cheekbone object. And again, what's really useful is to use a notepad if you can, and copy it to a notepad. Make things a lot easier. So I'm just going to go to my notepad. Just going to copy this. All right. And select my other objects, which is my cheek control and X, right? So I'm just going to copy this. And I'm just going to call this the cheekbones because I can literally put all the lines of scripts for both sides of cheekbones under a single expression name. Okay. Now, when I do that, what happens? It sets it back to 0. Okay. So before I did that, we need to look at what is the translate values of my translate z. Okay, so right now it's at minus 0.347, but if I were to create this, it's just going to follow my x here, which is my 0. Okay, so it's not going to be correct. So I need to follow this. Okay, again, going back to my notepad, and I'm just going to add negative whatever values that it says and create. So right now it's not going to move. And if I were to move this and see what happens, it's moving the opposite direction. So again, if it is moving the opposite direction, what should we do? All right, so can we set a negative sign? Okay, so by setting a negative sign to my object attributes, it will always follow. Okay, so again, if you are having trouble putting them in the same direction, you might just want to add a negative sign to it. All right, so the next thing is my y, right? So looking at this again, what is the value that is moving? Okay, so again, select the object, and this object is going to be my translate y, and my translate y is at 0.364. And again, if you know how to type it in, just be aware that typing, if you really want to type it out, you need to make sure that everything is case sensitive. Okay. So some of the common problems when my students came forward on getting invalid statements or invalid results is simply that they are not typing in according to their objects and their attributes, being the upper and lower case. All right, so plus 0.364. Okay, and also if let's say I forgot to put my semicolon, I hit edit, it will work also, but not always, so just be a little aware of it. All right, so right now it's moving correctly. So because I know that this is pretty much similar in nature, so I can right now copy and paste it and change all this to right. And just gotta make sure that some of these values is positive instead of negative. And my y is the same. Hit edit. So right now this should work correctly. All right. So there we have it. We can by using scripts we can easily create the controls that controls our cheekbone. And again, it's a good practice to limit how much you are gonna allow your cheekbone to be moved. All right, so in this case, perhaps 0.3 and maximum 0.06. And again, notice. All right, and of course y 0.07. All right. So there we have it. We had the two controls for my joints, and for my corner of my mouth is also the same. So I'm just gonna let you have a test and see how you would do with that, while I'm just gonna demonstrate on setting up a control for the joints. So let's say I'm gonna create another nubs circle. It's probably easier just to use this one. And all right. So let's say once I have something like this, one of the things again we want to control is how to set up so that when we move it, it's gonna rotate. So it's something similar to what we have done earlier. So again, go to the expression editor. I'm gonna go to my objects, and this is my lower jaw 01. And again, we gotta make sure that this is really rotate Z that we are looking at, right? So rotate Z. Again, good to paste it here just in case that you need it. Equals to, and select my this other objects, and I'm gonna call it the y-axis, translate y. All right. So technically speaking, this should do for my lower jaw. All right. The thing is, it's moving so slow. So what I can do is I can make a multiply by maybe 20. Okay, and now it's moving the opposite direction. So I can just put a negative sign in front of my lower jaw. All right. But what I've done here is just moving it up and down. It's not following the direction of my object. Okay, so what I really want to do is to be able to swing this based on the pivot here. So how can I do that? Now, this is pretty much a more intermediate way of looking at setting up controls. So you can always try this out. So right now, if I were to look at my objects, I have a pivot point here. And as you know, if I want to swing it across, I need to have place my pivot there. But if I were to place my pivot there and doing the selection and trying to make the control here, it's not gonna look correct. So let me just do a quick demonstration to you what happens if I were to do that. So let's say I move it to this point. So whenever that means whenever I select my control, I need to move it here, which is not gonna work out, right? So so how do I really put it over there? So what I can do is I can group it. Okay, group my control, and I'm gonna call this guy the lower jaw group. All right, and my pivot point will be down there, and I will need to change it and really put it right there. So based on my group's pivot, I'm able to rotate it this way, right? So I will need to think of how to change that, right? So right now I have my script whereby I have my lower jaw, which is my joints, being controlled by my controller. And maybe I should just make this font a little bigger. Okay, and let me just take this away. Okay, so lower jaw controlled by that. All right. So right now, what I want to do is to have my groups rotate, okay, which is my rotational value of my X. To be controlled by my translation. Okay, and we are going to take a quick look at what happens. So my lower jaw and I hit edit. So right now, if I were to select my lower jaw only, and it's not gonna show too much again because it's not extreme enough. So I'm gonna multiply by 100 just to take a look at what happens. So it is working, right? But of course it's moving at the wrong direction, and again we need to put a negative sign to it. So right now it's moving the right direction, but it's moving too fast. So I'll bring it down to 50 perhaps. Maybe too much. 25. All right. But of course this is not moving according to it. So perhaps I should really set this up much higher. Getting better. So again, how much you want it to move, you would really need to do trial and error. All right. So this is how I would do up if I were to go to my side view. You can tell that it's rotating accordingly. All right. Maybe not as much as I want to. Yeah, much better. Okay, and in any case, we are not gonna open up our jaw really that much. So I'm just gonna set it to 0.125. All right. So this would be for our opening of our mouth, and of course, if let's say I'm not gonna move my jaw left and right, really I would want to set it to 0. Again, this is just to help yourself or to help your animators understand what are really the constraints of your object or your character for. Okay, now the last part I would say is for our eyelids. All right, and again, looking at my expression editor, I have something here, and this is really for my cheekbones, and I want to rename it to cheekbones. Maybe call it script or something, and hit edit. Okay. Okay, so like I've mentioned, the next thing that we want to do is to create an open eyelid and close eyelids kind of thing. So most of the time I would select my my eye control. Okay, and again, because I know that it's just gonna move in X, Y, I'm just gonna hide all of this. So lock and hide selected. Okay, and I'm gonna go to my modify, add attribute, and gonna call this eyelids. Okay, set it to float. Really minimum is really up to you, so I'm just gonna say 0 to close my eyelids, and maybe 5 or 10 to open up my eyelids. So maybe 5, and default would be close my eyelids, which is 0. So I'm gonna hit add. Okay, and in this case, if you want to create a left eyelid and right eyelid to operate them separately, is really you can always do that. But for me right now, I'm just going to show you is to put up put up one attributes to control the both of them, right? So so once I have my eyelids, what I can do is go to Window, um, Animation Add, Expression Add. Okay, I'm gonna select by objects again, and I will see my eyelids. Right. So my eyelids is gonna be the control, and basically the rest is just gonna be opening up and down. So again, select this and really look at where this is moving. Okay, just to make sure that they are moving correctly. All right. So I'm just gonna do my translate Y just to take a look at whether if that it's gonna be correct. So delete all of this. Okay, translate Y, and I'm gonna select my control with my eyelids and semicolon. And again, we know that we need to find out the values of this. So it's 0.595. So I need to plus 0.595. And hit create. All right. So what's gonna happen is this might really bring this too much. Okay. So what we really want to do is when we are increasing this value, it should really slow it down. I'm gonna call this the eyelids script. All right. So because I know that 5 is going to be the maximum, so what I can do is make a bracket and have this divide by, let's say, 100, just to see what happens. Hit edit. So right now, if I were to open my eyelids, it's going to move much smaller at a smaller value, right? So this works for us. So as you can tell, this value, which is 0 to 5, is going to be divided by 100, okay, plus 0.95595. So that is going to be our overall value. So let's say if it my biggest value is what, 5, so 5 divided by 100 would be 0.005, okay, and it will add accordingly to this value. So this would be my output. So knowing that, the rest will be much easier. So I'm just going to select this guy, translate. All right. And I'm going to select this one, translate. And because I already know that, I'm going to select this and divide by 100. Okay. Now the only thing is I got to make sure that the values are right because this is really based on the corner. So looking at this guy is 0.635. 635 and 639. All right. copy all of this, and I'm just gonna look for my expression on my eyelids. Oh, yeah, moving up. Oh, that's right. Okay. Um, that's because right now it's at 5, so I should really bring it down. So with this, I can easily copy and paste, and I know that this is just setting it back to the right eyelids, right? So right now, if looking at this, it will all open at the same time and close at the same time. All right. So this is for my eyelids, and I have for my jaw. Sorry. So select that and moving it up and down. Um, I have it for my cheekbone, and of course, this guy is just gonna be the same as how I did my cheekbones. So looking at this, really simply again, make sure that okay, this is translate Z. All right, translate Z equals to my objects translate X. Okay, and of course, looking at the joints value 209, 209. Okay, and of course my semicolon. Okay, so again, do a quick test, moving at the wrong direction. Just make sure to set a negative sign in front, and right now it will move the same. All right, so just gonna do it real quickly for the opposite side. Right, right, and this would probably in the positive sign. Okay, so looking at this, they are moving in the right direction, and of course set up your limits, right? And of course, if you want to do a quick test again, select the head and select my root joint, skin, bind skin, smooth bind. All right, so right now if I were to select this eyelids, okay, you can tell that something is moving, right? But right now it's not correct because of the weights are not being painted yet. Okay, so this is moving correctly as well. So really, the last part here is to paint the weights correctly according to the joints. All right. Again, if you have problems painting weights, you can refer back to my previous tutorial on setting up the rig for the entire body. Okay, that would demonstrate a little bit on how to paint weights. All right, thank you for watching this tutorial.